Welcome to the Feminist Park Podcast. I'm Kwame.
And I'm Leonie. It's great to be kicking off this journey with you all today.
Yeah, we're diving into work that's really closely tied to the vision behind the Feminist Park Project, which was founded by Haase.
That project's goal is pretty ambitious, isn't it? Imagining these truly equitable public spaces, starting with the idea for an intersectional feminist park right here in Berlin.
Exactly. And this podcast, well, it's kind of an extension of that. We're going to be digging into the academic research that, supports and informs that kind of vision.
We'll be taking these dense, sometimes quite academic papers and really pulling out the core and insights.
And looking at them through specific lenses, things like environmental justice, intersectionality, anti-colonial thought, queer theory.
All the stuff that helps us think critically about space.
Okay, let's unpack this. We often hear about the magic of urban green spaces. New parks, rooftop gardens, tree-lined streets. On the surface, they sound like a universal good, right? A clear win-win.
Absolutely.
Healthier cities, more beautiful, more livable. Sounds perfect, but what if? What if that really positive vision holds a hidden paradox, a darker side? What if the very act of greening a city, while, it helps the environment, can also maybe accidentally, maybe not, make social inequalities worse?
Right.
And even push out the very people it's supposed to benefit. That's a pretty heavy thought, isn't it?
It's a genuinely sobering one. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how our best intentions can sometimes just diverge so sharply from what actually happens.
Yeah.
Creating these unintended and often, deeply harmful consequences.
Definitely.
So this deep dive, we're focusing on this really critical academic article. It's by Haase, Kabisch, and others from 2017. And the title really says it all. Greening Cities to be Socially Inclusive, about the alleged paradox of society and ecology in cities.
Wow. Okay. Provocative.
It is. And they shine this powerful light on this complex, often kind of overlooked relationship. They fundamentally challenge that straightforward idea.
Yeah.
The assumption that just adding more green to a city automatically means more social good for everyone.
Right. Not so simple. And our mission today, then, is to dive deep into what they found, their research, expose this paradox they talk about, and this is crucial, connect these insights to this really exciting, vital concept of a feminist park. How can we genuinely design urban spaces for true liberation, for equity, when the very act of making things greener can, ironically, become this tool for exclusion?
For displacement.
Exactly. How do we navigate that?
Get ready, because here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit uncomfortable, honestly. You might start looking at your city's parks, the greenways, those new developments.
Yeah,
a little differently after this chat.
I think you probably will. So let's start with the basics, the foundations here. The article you said, it centers on two major concepts driving all this urban greening today. Green infrastructure, GI, and nature-based solutions, NBS. We hear these terms thrown around a lot, especially in planning circles. Can you give us a quick primer, like what are they and what are they supposed to do in theory?
Absolutely. Let's break them down. So first, green infrastructure, or GI. It refers to this strategically planned network. Think natural and semi-natural areas.
Okay, a network, not just random spots.
Exactly. Not just individual parks. It's an interconnected, multifunctional web. So this includes everything from like big urban parks and people's private gardens to green roofs, street trees, even blue spaces.
Blue spaces, water.
Yeah, rivers, canals, wetlands, all part of this network. And the idea is they're all managed consciously to conserve biodiversity, enhance ecological processes, and deliver these really essential ecosystem services.
All right, like what kind of service?
Well, think clean air, water purification, flood control, even cooling cities down, regulating temperature. The core principle is really compelling. Enhance nature in the city, and you support human health, well-being. It's meant to have these broad, positive effects on quality of life for everyone.
Okay, that makes sense. That's GI. What about NBS? Nature-based solutions.
Right. So NBS, these are essentially instruments inspired by nature itself. They leverage ecological properties to enhance those same ecosystem services, but often in a more targeted way to tackle specific environmental problems.
Ah, okay, more specific tools.
Yeah, you could say that. They're often called living solutions because they're supported by natural processes. They're designed to be resource efficient, adaptable, and crucially, they're meant to provide economic, social, and environmental benefits all at once.
Right, the triple bottom line idea.
Exactly. So NBS can cover a huge range of actions, big stuff like afforestation, natural flood control systems, but also things like greeny building walls and roofs, encouraging urban gardening. And both GI and MBS, they're really championed by powerful institutions. Think the European Commission, for example. They see them as vital for creating sustainable, genuinely livable cities. They're aiming to tackle everything from climate change adaptation and air pollution to increasing social cohesion, human well-being. And critically, they explicitly claim these strategies foster social inclusiveness.
That exact phrase again, social inclusiveness.
Yeah, they link it to tackling pressing health challenges to air pollution, urban heat, floods, even things like cardiovascular disease or asthma. Yeah. On paper, it all paints this very compelling, almost utopian vision, doesn't it?
It certainly sounds incredibly positive on paper. Like, this is the clear path forward. Better, greener cities for everyone. It almost feels, well, a bit too good to be true sometimes. But this is exactly where Haase and her colleagues argue there's this major disconnection, a fundamental gap between these grand claims of universal social benefit and the lived realities, the often harsh social realities on the ground. So what's the core argument? What are they really saying that challenges this rosy picture?
Well, it forces us to ask that really important, maybe uncomfortable question. Do these big, ambitious greening strategies actually deliver on that promise of social equity? Or do they, maybe under certain conditions, actually undermine it, make things worse?
Right.
The core argument of Haase et al. Is that this supposed straightforward positive link between greening and social inclusion, it's often a paradox.
A paradox, meaning it leads to the opposite of what's intended.
Exactly. It contains a contradictory outcome. They argue that under certain very common circumstances, far from boosting cohesion and well-being for all, greening strategies actually carry a significant risk, a risk of fostering greater inequality between social groups, leading directly to things like sociospatial segregation, exclusion, and ultimately, displacement. The authors, they really scrutinize these concepts. They highlight that, okay, yes, green spaces generally improve urban life. We know that. But the distribution of those benefits, like who actually gets to enjoy them, and the very real negative impacts on less privileged residents, those are frequently just overlooked or ignored in the official stories.
So if I'm hearing you right, it's not just some accidental, unfortunate side effect that might pop up now and then. It can actually be an active driver of inequality, almost baked into the system. That's a really strong claim and unsettling.
Precisely. And they have specific terms for this. They call it green gentrification.
Green gentrification, okay.
Or sometimes eco-gentrification.
Yeah.
This is where environmental improvements often started with seemingly good intentions, right? Become these key ingredients into bigger urban renewal projects, revitalization schemes.
Right. Upgrading neighborhoods.
But these projects are, in reality, mostly market-driven. They're primarily designed to cater to and attract higher-income residents. The authors point out these strategies often get officially adopted, legitimized, as tools for urban upgrading. But the underlying mechanics, they're essentially economic ventures. The environmental aspect becomes a commodity, something to sell.
Ah, okay, like an amenity that increases value.
Exactly, an amenity for profit. And the crucial, uncomfortable insight here is that while these projects might be environmentally progressive, they achieve real ecological gains, maybe reduce pollution, increase biodiversity. They often remain socially selective.
Socially selective, meaning?
Meaning they prioritize those environmental gains in a way that disproportionately benefits certain social groups while actively disadvantaging others, leading to what some scholars have called a cleaning up and clearing out phenomenon.
Ooh, cleaning up and clearing out, that hits hard.
It does. It's a powerful and pretty insidious cycle.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. Let's try and unpack this with some real-world examples, because this isn't just theory in a paper, is it? This is impacting people's homes, their communities, their whole lives, all over the world.
Absolutely. It's very real.
So the article, it really drives home this paradox with some stark, tangible examples. And if we look at these through what we call an intersectional lens, looking at how different identities like class, race, gender overlap, we can really see how different groups are disproportionately affected. Let's start with maybe the most obvious dimension here, the class and socioeconomic perspective.
There.
How does money or lack of it play into this?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the economic impact is it's undeniable and often pretty immediate. Loads of studies show this consistent pattern. You add urban green space and housing prices go up significantly.
Right, like that big meta-analysis you mentioned.
Yeah, Brander and Coetzee confirmed it across markets globally. It's a very robust finding. And this isn't just some abstract economic shift, right? It creates this direct, undeniable link. class-based disparities, economic inequalities get amplified.
How so?
Well, the article points out this really troubling reality. Poorer areas typically have less vegetation, especially fewer big, mature trees. Compare that to affluent areas, which often have tons of private gardens, lush public parks. This leads to this profound, deeply unequal distribution of environmental goods. The good stuff, like clean air, shade, and environmental burdens, the bad stuff, like pollution, heat islands.
So the inequality is already there environmentally.
Exactly. This disparity in environmental quality often perfectly mirrors the existing socioeconomic divides, which means those who arguably need green spaces the most for health, for recreation, for just a break from the heat, often have the least access. And then, when green space does get added to their areas, they risk being pushed out because it makes the area too expensive. It's a cruel irony.
A double whammy, almost.
Pretty much. And the authors, they build on this idea from Weil, Jonas, and Gibbs. They called it the sustainability fix.
Okay, what's the sustainability fix? It sounds a bit cynical.
It kind of is. Basically, it's when city governments or powerful developers, the entrepreneurial urban regimes, they incorporate the green agenda, not just for environmental reasons, but primarily into a neoliberal development framework.
Neoliberal, meaning market-driven, profit-focused.
Exactly. So greening becomes a commodity, a feature to sell higher-priced real estate.
Right.
Not treated as a universal public good for everyone.
Ah, I see.
And this approach, driven by market logic, frequently makes existing inequalities worse, not better. It turns environmental improvements into tools for economic restructuring that benefit the already privileged.
So sustainability gets reframed from a public service to a private asset.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this isn't entirely new either. It has deep historical roots.
Really? How far back?
Well, think back to the 19th century. Bourgeois districts, the wealthy areas, consistently got better, bigger, meticulously maintained parks. Compare that to working class areas, which often had sparse green space, if any, or poorly maintained patches.
Right. A long history of inequality and access?
Definitely. Now, after World War II, there were attempts to change this, promote more housing mixed with green space. But that vision, it often didn't pan out. Mass housing, built quickly to deal with shortages, often meant high-density areas with very little, often poor-quality green space right nearby. So this historical pattern just clearly shows this long entrenched legacy: green space tied to social class, unequal power, unequal wealth in cities.
That historical context is so important. It shows this isn't just some recent mistake, but a pattern. And the article gives us some really compelling modern case studies that bring this theory right into the present day. Let's start with one you mentioned, the Leonie Park in Leipzig, Eastern Germany. What happened there? What's the story?
Right, the Leonie Park. Created back in 2001 on an old railway station site. And initially, it looked like a model project, really. It was an initiative to upgrade this run-down brownfield district, transforming neglected space.
Okay, sounds good so far.
And they actually involved residents, held workshops, got opinions. The stated aim was providing much-needed green space, playgrounds for kids in this dense area. And it was popular. People liked it. It connected eastern districts to the city's main green lung on the surface. A perfect example of socially conscious greening. A real community win.
Okay. I sense a but coming.
He said so. Right, because despite the good intentions, the park inadvertently kicked off this rapid residential change, a cycle of green gentrification.
How?
The park, meant as a community benefit, quickly became the heart of this newly attractive and increasingly expensive area. Rents nearby just skyrocketed. They went from about 4.5 euros per square meter in 2000 to almost 7 euros by 2017.
Wow, that's a huge jump.
Massive. Now imagine you're a long-term resident, maybe elderly, on a fixed income, or a working-class family. Lived there for decades, you finally see this beautiful park built, and then suddenly that improvement triggers rent hikes that make your home completely unaffordable.
Oh, man. That's brutal.
It is, and as a direct result, new residents moved in, often younger families, higher incomes, while the former dwellers, including elderly folks, less affluent households, they were simply priced out, forced to leave, sever ties with their community.
So the very thing meant to improve their lives ended up displacing them.
Exactly. It highlights so vividly how even well-intentioned greening can have these unexpected, deeply negative socioeconomic consequences, transforming a working-class neighborhood into one for the better off.
That's a really heartbreaking, unexpected result, as the article calls it. That makes you wonder if unexpected is even the right word, given how often this pattern repeats.
That's a fair point. How unexpected can it really be?
But the article also talks about more deliberate drivers of gentrification, where greening is maybe more overtly used as a tool, like those big waterfront developments.
Indeed, yeah. Waterfront developments in major cities. Liverpool, London, Hamburg, New York, they're prime examples.
Yeah.
And often quite cynical ones.
Cynical how?
Well, these projects typically feature very high quality, very high-priced housing. And they deliberately incorporate GI and NBS as key selling points, luxuries. They are explicitly targeting better-off urban dwellers. It's not subtle.
Okay.
So in these cases, lower-income groups are either forcefully displaced from existing homes nearby, or, even more subtly, they're ex-ante excluded, meaning they're prevented from moving in from the start because the costs are just prohibitive.
Right. Priced out before they even get a chance.
Exactly. That's what Marquis called exclusionary displacement. Displacement not just by eviction, but by making it impossible to afford to live there.
Exclusionary displacement. Powerful term.
It is. And it shows clearly how greening can be consciously used as a market tool. The environmental amenities are part of a luxury package to attract specific high-income residents, actively pushing others out, fundamentally reshaping the social map of the city.
It's not always about improving the environment for everyone, then. Sometimes it's about using the environment to engineer social change.
That's a stark way to put it, but yeah, that's what the evidence suggests often happens, though sometimes there's pushback.
Oh, yeah. Like where?
Well, Berlin had that big plebiscite in 2014 about the Tempelhofer Feld. Residents mobilized and actually stopped luxury housing being built on that old airfield, kept it as this huge open green space for everyone.
Wow. Okay. So resistance is possible.
It is,
Yeah.
though even there, the area around the park still gentrified because the park itself made it so desirable. It's complex.
It's definitely complex. And then there's the really famous example, the Highland Park in New York City. It's like a global icon of cool urban greening, right? Celebrated everywhere. But the article offers a more sobering view. Suggests it's not all good.
The High Line is absolutely fascinating and incredibly complex. It really forces you to confront these paradoxes. Built on that disused elevated railway, its origins were actually quite grassroots. This group, Friends of the High Line, started it, then got government support, big money.
Right, I remember that. A real success story, people said.
Widely cited globally, yeah. Success for urban regeneration, adaptive reuse, innovative greening, all true in a way. However, its undeniable success led directly to this complete remaking of the surrounding neighborhoods. Huge social trade-offs. It became a textbook example of green gentrification.
How did that happen so drastically?
A key factor was this rezoning decision by the NYC Council back in 2005. It deliberately allowed luxury and high-rise development right around the park, in an area that used to be mostly low-rise commercial buildings.
Ah, okay. Paving the way for high-end development.
Exactly. Combine the park's huge popularity with this permissive rezoning. Boom, property values exploded like never before. Between 2003 and 2011, the median property value within just a 5-minute walk, it rose by 103%.
Doubled. More than doubled.
Yeah, way, way more than the average increase for Manhattan overall. Imagine your property value more than doubling in under 10 years, largely because this public park was leveraged for private profit.
That's intense. And the impact on people.
Very real, very human. It dramatically forced out small businesses, community cornerstones for years, and moderate-income residents, artists, people who just couldn't afford the crazy rent hikes, the rise in property taxes, gone.
So it hollowed out the existing community?
Pretty much. Millington described it as an example of the contemporary neoliberalization of park space, privileging these high-profile, flashy parks over just providing decent green space more broadly for everyone.
Neoliberalization of park space. Basically turning parks into market assets again.
Right. So the High Line, despite its cool design, its environmental pluses, it reinforced and sped up ongoing gentrification. The shops, the cafes nearby, they adapted almost entirely to tourist needs. Luxury consumption, further pushing out long-term residents, local family businesses.
So it transformed from maybe a gritty public space into this economic engine serving mostly tourists and the wealthy, not the original community.
That's a fair summary, yeah. A stark reminder that even a beloved green space can drive inequality if the policy behind it isn't focused on social justice.
It really makes you question who benefits and who pays the price for these dazzling transformations. Okay, so we've talked a lot about class and economics, but if we widen that intersectional lens, think about who else gets caught in this paradox of greening. We start seeing patterns affecting identity, history, belonging. Let's dig into the migrant and racial justice perspective. The article uses broad terms like less privileged residents, but how do its findings about segregation and uneven distribution resonate specifically with these communities?
This is a really crucial area to interpret the article's findings more broadly.
Yeah.
Because when the text talks about increasing sociospatial differentiation, or the uneven distribution of environmental goods and burdens, it inherently touches upon, and in many real-world contexts, directly implicates issues of racial and migrant justice.
How so?
Well, these communities are often disproportionately affected, historically, by lack of access to quality green spaces. And they are frequently the ones most vulnerable to displacement when green gentrification hits.
Why is that?
Think about historical injustices. Discriminatory policies like redlining, exclusionary zoning, they systematically concentrated marginalized communities, particularly racialized and migrant groups, in areas that already lacked green amenities, areas often suffering from higher pollution, closer to industrial sites. Environmental injustice is baked in.
Right, so they start from a position of disadvantage.
Exactly. So when a greening project finally comes along, in or near their area, they're often the first to face displacement, losing not just their homes, but established support networks, cultural hubs, the whole social fabric of their community.
So the improvement becomes a threat.
It can, yeah. And the examples from post-socialist countries like Poland and Bulgaria are quite telling here, even if they don't explicitly name race or migration status. In those places, weak regulations, often legacies of that rapid shift to market economies, allow developers to build luxury housing right next to, or even inside, existing public green spaces, with very little oversight.
Seriously, building in parks.
It happens. In Lodz, Poland, this building called Solaris went up. Despite negatively impacting the park for existing users, shrinking it, reducing its quality, it ended up containing some of the city's most expensive apartments.
Wow.
The prices were so extreme, they actually skewed the data in a property value study. Had to be excluded. That shows you how exclusive it was.
That's blatant.
And in Sofia, Bulgaria, nearly a third of the city's green areas were lost in just 15 years, due to what critics literally call construction terrorism.
Construction terrorism.
Yeah. Exploiting legal loopholes, a system prioritizing profit over public good. And these patterns of exploiting public resources, they often hit marginalized and racialized communities hardest. Why? Because they typically have less political power to fight back, fewer economic resources to cope with rising costs. Their voices often just get ignored in planning.
So the lack of protection for public green space makes vulnerable communities even more vulnerable.
Precisely. They're left exposed to market forces that consistently disregard their needs.
That concept of construction terrorism is chilling. Really highlights the aggression involved sometimes. Okay, let's shift focus again. Thinking about the feminist and gender perspective. The article mainly talks broad socioeconomic impacts, doesn't use explicitly gendered language much. But how might green gentrification disproportionately affect women and gender-diverse individuals? We know they often fall into that less privileged category, but what are the specific gender dimensions?
This is where that intersectional lens is just so critical. It lets us see the specific gendered impacts within those broader trends. When the article talks about less privileged residents or low-income households being displaced, we have to recognize that women, especially single mothers, and gender-diverse folks often face greater economic precarity. They're statistically more likely to be in those situations.
Right, more vulnerable economically.
Exactly. So the loss of affordable housing, or losing access to truly public green spaces, it hits their ability to maintain stable households harder, access essential services like childcare, healthcare, find safe, accessible places for recreation for themselves and their families. Their economic vulnerability just means fewer options when rents or property values shoot up. Displacement isn't just an inconvenience, it's often a life-altering crisis.
And beyond the economics?
Well, think about the gender division of labor traditionally. Women often rely more heavily on local public spaces for daily life, for caregiving. These spaces are crucial for kids' play, for informal social networks, community connection. Think moms meeting at the park. So if displacement happens, or if parks get transformed into highly commercialized, exclusive spaces, maybe geared towards tourism or high-end leisure, it can severely disrupt these vital networks.
They might not feel welcome or safe anymore.
Exactly. If a park's design or social dynamic shifts, issues like poor lighting, lack of clear sightlines, or just a general feeling of not belonging can make women and gender-diverse people feel less secure. Patriarchal urban planning, even unintentionally, often creates environments where certain groups feel less safe or welcome. Maybe design choices prioritize activities traditionally seen as male, or just overlook safety concerns that disproportionately affect women.
So the design itself can be exclusionary.
Absolutely. Which is why the article's call for green spaces to be places of encounter for different groups, designed with culturally diverse elements, is so important. It directly implies challenging those traditional, often male-centric ideas of public space, creating environments truly inclusive of all genders and experiences, addressing safety, accessibility, diverse needs head-on.
That's a powerful point about daily life, caregiving, and public space being so intertwined for women. Safety and access are definitely not universal experiences. Okay, finally, let's touch on queer theory and ableism, disability justice. The article doesn't explicitly use these terms, right? But it keeps calling for social inclusiveness, addressing various groups. How does that implicitly include these critical perspectives?
It's true, the specific terms aren't there, but the whole underlying message, the critique of exclusion, it strongly advocates for considering the diverse needs of all urban populations. When they call for green spaces accessible for diverse populations with multiple effects, that means going way beyond the assumed typical user, challenging who we think parks are for.
Okay, so it opens the door.
Absolutely. It necessitates integrating queer and disability justice perspectives. The authors keep stressing, understand who wins and who loses in greening. Recognize and accommodate a diversity of social perspectives.
So how does that translate for queer communities?
It means designing spaces that are unequivocally safe, visible, welcoming for non-normative expressions of identity, relationships, community, challenging those pervasive heteronormative assumptions about how public space is used, who uses it, ensuring LGBTQIA+ people can gather, express themselves, feel they belong, without fear of judgment, harassment, or just feeling invisible.
Creating space where all identities can flourish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for individuals with disabilities, it means ensuring physical accessibility in its broadest sense, not just ramps.
Right. What else?
Sensory considerations, planting, sounds,
Yeah.
thoughtful path design, inclusive, adaptable play areas, overcoming all those physical, social, attitudinal barriers that traditional urban design often throws up. Making green spaces truly usable, enjoyable, empowering for everyone, regardless of physical or cognitive ability.
It sounds like a much deeper level of inclusion.
It is. And the article's emphasis on including different opinions and, as far as possible, contrasting views, needs, and demands, that's fundamental here. It means not just giving people access, but genuinely recognizing, valuing, integrating their lived experiences, their insights, their specific needs into the planning and design, even if it's more costly or less market-friendly to do so.
Right. Prioritizing people over profit or ease.
Precisely. That holistic, person-centered approach to inclusion is exactly what queer theory and disability justice frameworks push for in creating truly equitable cities.
Okay. This has been, wow, such a vital and, deeply sobering deep dive into the often unintended and sometimes, deliberate consequences of greening our cities. It paints this stark picture, environmental benefits leveraged to make social inequalities worse. But now, let's turn towards hope, towards solutions. Let's talk about a concept aimed squarely at counteracting these issues, the Feminist Park. How do all these powerful, often uncomfortable insights from the Haase article directly inform, validate, provide that critical context for the design, the mission of a feminist park? This feels like moving from the problem to the solution.
It really does. And the Haase article, it provides more than just a foundation. It's an irrefutable validation of why a feminist park isn't just, a nice idea. It's absolutely necessary, urgent even in today's cities.
Why necessary?
Because that paradox of greening, that systemic issue of green gentrification they expose, it directly validates the need for urban spaces designed explicitly with social justice, equity, liberation right at their core. The article exposes the deep flaws, the inherent biases, the systemic failures in conventional greening, how strategies, even with good intentions, consistently fall short on social equity and actually worsen inequalities.
It shows the current model is broken, basically.
In many ways, yes. The article's meticulous documentation of exclusionary displacement, the disproportionate impact on less privileged residents, women, gender-diverse folks, racialized communities, people with disabilities, it powerfully underscores that current greening often fails spectacularly to be truly inclusive and makes it crystal clear. Just adding green space isn't enough.
It's the how, the for whom, the with whom that matter.
Exactly. And a feminist park. It actively seeks to reverse those harmful trends, create a sanctuary that deliberately prioritizes these very groups, ensuring those most impacted by current exclusion are instead uplifted, centered, empowered, and the design, the use, the stewardship of urban green space. It's a proactive counter-narrative to green gentrification.
Okay, so the article validates the need. How does it inform the design, the principles?
Well, those insights from Haase et al., they translate directly into robust, actionable design principles, almost like a roadmap for countering the failures they identified. There are 6 prerequisites for socially inclusive urban green space. They serve as this incredibly powerful framework for a feminist park.
Okay, let's go through them. What's the first one?
First, a feminist park is designed from the get-go to deliberately acknowledge and address existing socio-spatial inequalities, not ignore them, not reinforce them.
Moving beyond being colorblind or class-blind.
Precisely. Explicitly avoiding privileging already wealthy areas, focusing instead on communities hit hardest by green gentrification or areas historically lacking quality green space. This means things like active land acquisition strategies, community land trusts, things that challenge market logic, ensuring the park doesn't just become another exclusive eco-enclave, but fosters genuinely open and inclusive eco-urbanism.
So maybe putting it in an underserved area with measures to keep housing affordable nearby.
Exactly, that kind of intentionality.
Okay, prerequisite 2.
Second, the planning process itself embodies including diverse actors and opinions, actively seeking out, prioritizing the voices, the needs, the contrasting views of women, gender-diverse people, migrant communities, people with disabilities, low-income residents, making sure their invaluable tacit and community knowledge isn't just heard, but is absolutely central to every design decision.
So moving beyond just ticking boxes on public consultation.
Way beyond. Genuine co-creation. Recognizing there isn't just one right way to design or use nature in the city. Think community design assemblies, multilingual workshops, real outreach to often marginalized groups.
Got it. What's number 3?
Third, a Feminist Park Project would tackle trade-offs head-on. Be transparent about them. Acknowledge, analyze, consciously plan to maximize social benefits while proactively implementing strategies to prevent gentrification.
Being realistic that greening can raise property values.
Utterly realistic. And putting robust preemptive measures in place, like rent stabilization agreements nearby, community benefit agreements, inclusionary zoning, maybe even building public affordable housing close by. It's about being just green enough in a way that serves social justice, not just chasing ecological perfection at any social cost.
Okay, number 4.
Fourth, aiming to be a true place of encounter for different groups of people, designed for multiple effects. Features thoughtfully curated to appeal to a wide range of culturally diverse people, and critically designed for maximum accessibility and safety for all genders and abilities.
What does that look like in practice?
Varied lighting for safety, clear sightlines, diverse and adaptable recreation options for different ages and abilities, maybe culturally relevant planting choices, definitely gender-neutral facilities, spaces for quiet reflection and vibrant gathering. The goal is a space that genuinely welcomes, includes, serves its incredibly diverse community.
Makes sense. Prerequisite 5.
Fifth, its management. Ideally involving that kind of multi-actor governance, Haase et al. Talk about. Proactively including local government and a broad range of civil society groups. Ensuring inclusive representation, robust ways to guard against negative side effects, market pressures.
Like those examples from Brazil you mentioned.
Exactly. Collaborative protection involving residents and groups. But the article also notes, realistically, that many people with a stake might not join traditional processes. So a feminist park needs proactive, innovative, embedded outreach in its ongoing governance, too.
Right. Always reaching out. And the last one, number 6.
Finally, a feminist park inherently looks at the political and economic context of greening, understands with clear eyes how market-driven strategies lead to exclusion. It deliberately, fiercely challenges the idea of urban nature as just a commodity, positions it as an inviolable public good, protected from speculative markets.
Recognizing that parks aren't neutral spaces, they're about power and resources.
Absolutely. A feminist park has to be actively shielded from that sustainability fix that tragically turns environmental improvements into drivers of inequality.
So the article doesn't just validate the need and inform the design, it also highlights the specific challenges a feminist park has to overcome.
Explicitly. Those examples, Lane Voigt Park, the High Line, show how greening can directly displace people.
Yeah.
So a feminist park must have explicit, legally binding anti-gentrification measures built in. From day one, that exclusionary displacement in waterfronts, the targeting of the wealthy, that's precisely what a feminist park dismantles, ensuring truly public accessible space for all. And the problems in Eastern Europe, weak laws, construction terrorism, they show the need for robust, community-led, legally fortified frameworks to protect feminist parks from private interests.
So by understanding the failures, we can design to resist them.
Exactly. Understanding the mechanisms of exclusion lets you proactively design and structure to respond those forces, become a genuine model of equity. And ultimately, that whole discussion on green gentrification, the sustainability fix, it gives us the critical theory. Why traditional planning, even with green intentions, so often fails on social justice. A feminist park emerges directly from that critique. Aiming for a truly comprehensive, equity-oriented, socially sustainable approach, prioritizing liberation, community well-being, flourishing, over just market value or aesthetics.
Wow. Okay. So what does all of this mean for us, for you listening right now in your own communities? This deep dive, it's shown us pretty unequivocally, hasn't it? The path to greener cities isn't automatically, maybe not even often, a path to more just cities. That paradox of greening, it's a powerful, maybe even shocking reminder. Without deliberate, deeply socially conscious planning, environmental benefits, no matter how well-intentioned, can come at this incredibly steep social cost.
A cost often borne by the most vulnerable.
Right. It profoundly challenges us. Look beyond the pretty surface, the perceived eco-gains of new green spaces. Dig deeper. Consider the intricate social, economic, political implications.
Which really raises that urgent question for all of us, doesn't it? How can we, just as regular city dwellers, start to critically question the greening projects happening right where we live?
Yeah, what can we do?
Well, the author suggests some formal tools planners could use, like sustainability appraisal, going beyond just environment to rigorously assess social impacts, or vulnerability analysis, integrating social inclusion right from the start. And crucially, they talk about that idea of being just green enough.
Just green enough, meaning?
Finding thoughtful, intentional ways for sustainability to genuinely open up space for diversity, for democracy in our cities without triggering that exclusionary green gentrification. It means not aiming for greening at any cost, but meticulously balancing environmental goals with social equity, with justice right from the beginning, accepting that sometimes maybe a less perfectly green outcome is actually the most socially just one.
Exactly. And it's about ensuring green spaces aren't just, dotted evenly around the city, which is a start, but also, as Haase et al. Stress, furnished by diverse vegetation and meticulously designed so all inhabitants have equal access and, crucially, equal benefits.
Equal benefits, that's key.
Yeah. It goes way beyond just living near a park. Is the park truly serving the diverse needs, the cultural preferences, the safety concerns of everyone in the community, regardless of background, income, gender, race, ability?
We have to move beyond that narrow, maybe technocratic view of greening, just focus on ecological stats and embrace this holistic, human-centered approach.
The core message, then, the undeniable takeaway from this deep dive.
Greening is vital, yes, but it's not a panacea, not a magic bullet. It's an essential solution, sure, but it must be integrated into a broader policy mix.
Right.
A planning approach that explicitly tackles existing inequalities, genuinely incorporates diverse voices, diverse needs at every single stage.
But
Without that conscious, intentional integration, we risk exactly what Haase et al. Warn about, creating developments that are environmentally progressive but socially selective.
Which ultimately means they fail. They fail to achieve true holistic sustainability.
Right. The aim has to be creating cities where nature's benefits are truly shared by all, where green spaces foster genuine inclusion, liberation, not act as these insidious catalysts for exclusion and displacement.
So for you listening right now, when you look at the parks, the greenways, the new green initiatives popping up in your own city, I want you to ask yourself, who is this green space truly for? And just as importantly, who might be getting pushed out? Quietly or maybe not so quietly? What kind of courageous conversations need to happen in your community to ensure that greening genuinely leads to liberation, to flourishing for everyone, not just for the privileged few who can afford the rising costs?
How can you advocate for inclusive planning? Demand transparency, prioritize the voices of marginalized communities, safeguard against this insidious paradox.
Because the future of our cities,
as the human habitat of the 21st century, as Cito and Reenberg put it, it hinges critically on this more equity-oriented, profoundly inclusive approach to urban greening. The fundamental challenge isn't just bringing green into the city. It's ensuring with every fiber of our planning and design that green truly serves the whole urban society in all its diverse parts, for all its people, addressing their varied abilities to benefit from the good stuff and, crucially, to not suffer from the bad stuff, the environmental burdens.
It requires that comprehensive, critical, compassionate look, acknowledging the potential, yes, but also the very real threats.
Exactly.
That's it for this incredibly vital deep dive. into the paradox of greening and the crucial insights it offers for designing truly liberated, equitable spaces. Like the Feminist Park, what an essential journey through urban planning, environmental justice, social equity.
Wow. It really does highlight that knowledge is most valuable when it's not just understood, but actively applied, right? And that critical thinking is just essential for navigating the often rosy promises and the very real pitfalls of urban development, especially with something that sounds as universally positive as greening.
Absolutely. We sincerely hope this has given you a fresh perspective, maybe sparked a new conversation, maybe even ignited a fire for deeper exploration, for action, right where you live. Thanks so much for joining us for this crucial conversation. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
This knowledge is a tool, really. A tool for seeing your city differently, and potentially for helping to change it.
It's been a really insightful deep dive, I think. This document provides such a vital framework, especially for projects like the Feminist Park Project that are trying to build something fundamentally different. It shows just how interlinked urban design and social justice are.
It really does. But it also shows the scale of the challenge, right? It requires sustained effort, real commitment, and a genuine willingness to shift power dynamics in how cities get made and managed.
Definitely. It makes you think about how we ensure those voices, the ones that have been excluded, are actually heard and centered.
There's another quote from Sarah Ahmed in the handbook that feels relevant here.
Go on.
She says, "If you have to shout to be heard, you are heard as shouting."
That's powerful.
It makes you ponder, doesn't it? How can the design of public space itself work differently? How can it amplify the voices of those who've been historically silenced, ensuring their needs are met without them having to shout just to be noticed?
How can design itself listen? That's a really provocative thought to end on.
A lot to think about.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.